What is up, everyone? It's Quinn here, and in today's video, I'm going to be going through some early season trade targets, players I'd be looking to buy low on after week 1 of the NFL season. I think early in the season is really the best time to attack trades because people tend to overreact after the first few weeks. They go out, they draft their team, they're feeling really good, but if their team busts, certain players underperform, people tend to freak out and overreact after, just a week or two. Personally, when I'm looking at like players I'm panicking on or players, I'm just accepting a bad week from, it kind of just comes down to their usage rather than their actual production. I will overreact or maybe just accurately react if someone's usage is different than I was expecting. If I thought a running back was going to be a workhorse in week 1 and they're in a committee, that's concerning. If I thought, a wide receiver was a top 2 wide receiver and they are a top 2 wide receiver, they just struggled in week 1, then I'm not overreacting to one bad game. It happens. Even the best players are going to have a few duds every once in a while. So that's kind of what I'm looking at here. Did I like a player heading in? Was their usage solid in week 1? Then I'm willing to buy low on them if they did underperform. If you guys enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe. Any fantasy questions, drop them down below. I'll make sure to get back to every single person. But I want to start off here by talking about pretty much the entire Bears offense, but specifically DJ Moore and Odunze. So DJ Moore was targeted 8 times, caught 5 of them for 36 yards, also had 14 rushing yards. I guess he didn't completely flop. It definitely wasn't what you were expecting, but still a pretty solid fantasy day considering the Bears only threw for 93 yards and had 0 passing touchdowns. But for DJ Moore, we know he's a proven top wide receiver. He was a wide receiver 1 in points per game last year with Justin Fields. And this is just a bet on a talented, rookie quarterback turning it around. There's no doubt about it. Caleb Williams did not look good in week 1. He did not play well. He was not supporting these weapons, but we know he's talented. He was the number 1 pick for a reason. I'm just willing to bet that he kind of turns it around here. DJ Moore's role was solid. We know who he is. 94% raw participation. Like I said, commanded 8 targets. So I'm definitely not hitting the panic button here on DJ Moore, and I would be willing to buy low if someone is kind of freaking out. And then the other guy here, Odunze, even though he didn't really do anything stats-wise, I think his week 1 usage was pretty encouraging. He had an 85% route participation and actually ran more routes than Keenan Allen. I was someone who was in on Odunze, pretty much assuming that he'd be the clear-cut wide receiver 3 early on in the year, and then at some point he'd be able to overtake Keenan Allen. Now, I do think, he was in there on that route participation because Keenan Allen was kind of banged up. He was a little bit limited, but that still goes in his favor because you have, a 32-year-old wide receiver who's already injured to start off the year. I think it's just going to make it that much easier for Odunze to kind of take over in those 2 wide receiver sets. So once again, betting on Caleb to bounce back, and then also just betting on a top 10 wide receiver prospect, to improve throughout the season. And I definitely think he's someone who could be putting up great production over the second half. And then I also think if you were someone who liked Keenan Allen, DeAndre Swift heading into the year, both those guys had solid usage. I just wasn't super in on either of them, so I'm not really looking to buy low on them because I was never all that high in the first place. But if you liked Keenan Allen, you like DeAndre Swift, I think they're solid buys also. And then for Caleb Williams, I wouldn't say I'm going way out of my way to make a trade for him. At this point, with how deep the quarterback position is, there are probably, either another solid option on your roster or just someone on waivers if you don't trust them. But if someone's pretty much going to give him away for free or cut him after one bad week, I'm definitely willing to, buy extra low on him or just scoop him up off of waivers. Now, shifting over to the Cardinals' weapons, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Trey McBride, this was pretty much a complete dud out of Marvin Harrison Jr. 3 targets, 1 reception, 4 yards. He was someone that was pretty consistently going in the second round of fantasy drafts. And I do think if there's some people out there where they were buying into the Marvin Harrison Jr. hype, maybe they were a little bit uneasy drafting a rookie in round 2 or, maybe round 3, depending on what platform you were drafting on. I do think there could be some vulnerability where they're starting to freak out. They kind of made a bet on this unproven entity and they think maybe he's going to flop throughout the rest of the season. Personally, I'm not panicking. The usage was there. He was their clear-cut wide receiver 1 in terms of a 95% route participation. Kyler's proven he can support a wide receiver 1. He did it with DeAndre Hopkins. He did it with Hollywood Brown this season where D-Hop missed the first, 6 games of the season. So I'm not worried. Marvin Harrison Jr. is a top-tier prospect. If someone's going to lose their minds after one bad week for a rookie wide receiver, I'm totally cool buying low on Marvin Harrison Jr. And then Trey McBride didn't necessarily have an awful game, especially compared to some of the other elite tight ends where pretty much all the top tight ends just flopped, I guess with the exception of Kyle Pitts. He had 5 receptions for 30 yards, not what you were expecting, but like I said, not as bad as some of the other top tight ends. I really have like zero concerns with Trey McBride. The usage was there, 89% route participation. He led the team with 9 targets. I actually still view him as like a top 2 tight end rest of season. I originally had him as my tight end 3 heading into the year. I think rest of the season I would take him over Travis Kelce. So I still like Trey McBride. I still like Marvin Harrison Jr. I'm not jumping off the boat, after one bad game. And then the final buy low player I have here is Tank Dell. And I really like Tank Dell heading into the season. And I do think this is a prime opportunity to buy low here. His usage was actually pretty great. The concern heading into the year, and as someone who was in on him, was that he was the clear-cut wide receiver 3 in terms of the preseason usage. It was Nico Collins, it was Stephon Diggs in on 2 wide receiver sets, and the Texans were not going to as many 3 wide receiver looks as you would have liked, to confidently draft Tank Dell. Like his route participation was in like that 70 to 80% range, which could still be playable, but you're not really going to unlock much of a ceiling with that type of usage. In week 1, he had an 87% route participation. He only ran 1 fewer route than Stephon Diggs, and he actually ran 1 more route than Nico Collins. So his usage was about as good as you could have asked for here in week 1. He was tied for the team lead with 8 total targets. And you look at Stephon Diggs, he by far had the biggest fantasy day out of these 3 wide receivers. He scored 2 touchdowns, but based on his week 1 usage, it kind of seems like Stephon Diggs' upside is going to be capped rest of season. Diggs was targeted 6 times. He only racked up 9 total air yards. Like he was not used down the field at all. He was completely underneath. And obviously it led to 2 touchdowns, but I don't think that's something that's going to be like sustainable rest of season. Tank Dell, even though he only went 3 for 40, he still racked up more receiving yards than Stephon Diggs. And he also racked up 105 air yards. That was top 10 for wide receivers that have played so far. So it didn't really come through production-wise, but he's getting the ball down the field. He's getting targeted heavily early on in the season. And if this week 1 route participation sticks, I truly do believe that bigger games are going to be coming here for Tank Dell. We know last year he averaged 18 plus PPR points per game in his healthy games when he was playing with Nico Collins. We know the talent's there. He had no problem scoring touchdowns last year. So I'm not like freaking out going, oh my God, Stephon Diggs is going to be the best option here. I think Nico Collins is the clear wide receiver 1. If Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs are going to be close together in routes rest of season, I would prefer Tank Dell just as the younger option. And I do think he's going to be a top 24 wide receiver rest of season. So those are some of my most notable buy lows after week 1. Obviously, if you want to throw in like the clear ones, like the insane upside guys, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jamar Chase, the highly drafted players, I think most league mates are smart enough to not freak out because Amon-Ra St. Brown had like 1 bad game, or Jamar Chase had like 1 non-elite game while he was sick and then, wasn't practicing with the team. So if you have a league mate that's going to freak out over like Amon-Ra St. Brown or Jamar Chase, I'm totally cool going after those guys also. But in terms of the players that are probably more likely where people are starting to freak out, I think those Bears weapons, the Cardinals weapons, Marvin Harrison Jr., Trey McBride, and then Tank Dell, I really think is like the clear buy low because the usage was so clearly there. The role was fun. The production just didn't follow, but I do think it will in the future. So those are my buy lows. Let me know your thoughts. Any fantasy questions, drop them down below. If you enjoyed the video, do me a huge favor, hit that like button and subscribe. But thank you all for stopping by, and I will see you in the next one.